Creating fiction and writing books is hard. Living a laid-back country life may look like an ideal lifestyle, but there's a tremendous amount of hard work involved in surviving in a picturesque environment. To thrive in any one of these areas requires grit, fortitude, a willingness to give it a go and not care what anyone else thinks. The discipline it takes to write a book is the same discipline it takes to sustain a farm. And Brooke Strahan does both. Growing up in the outback of Australia, Brooke learned quickly to work hard and keep up. Following after her father and older brother, Brooke developed a love for the land, the things that want to kill you, and a rural way of life, specifically because it made her tougher, stronger. And that toughness served her well in the Royal Australian Air Force, and even now as she raises small livestock in the high country of New South Wales. Her time in the service also served her well as she drew from that experience to author the book, The Subject. Now concluding the final chapter of what has turned into the trilogy of Bianca Beretta, Brooke is ready to move on to a completely different subject for her next book. It's clear that when you craft a lifestyle you love, there is no limit to what you can accomplish. Brooke continues to demonstrate that. Unlike other attractive influencers on social media, Brooke's content is not just beautiful, but honest and real, and one of the few worth emulating. Hear how she manages it all, even with a bruised tailbone, in my extraordinary conversation with Brooke Strahan. How's your bump? How you feeling? How's your coccyx?
It's still really sore, but I'm moving around a lot better. Like I can move a lot faster than I was. It's more achy, like just sitting or just standing. Last night, like sleeping, normally I've been sleeping okay and not feeling it too much, unless I moved. But last night, just lying still, it was like throbbing. It's still quite swollen. But the main thing is I'm moving around better.
So what's the kind of generic pain relief? Like for us, it's Tylenol or Advil or whatever. For you guys in Australia, what do you?
And Panadol or Nurofen are the two generic type ones. Yeah.
It's so interesting to see the, kind of the different perspectives. You're the second person from Australia that I've had the chance to interview, and kind of understanding like all of your little genres and all the different little twists and quirks and things that you call different things. And like the milk, the last one I was interviewing, she was talking about a milk shack or a milk shop or something like that. It's like basically like a convenience store or whatever.
If you say a milk bar, that's
milk
more
bar,
like
maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, that's more like like a general, like a little corner shop.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly
no, more like a mama and pa setup, like little corner shop.
Her parents owned one of those. That's what they were.
They're not so common now. They used to be like pretty much on like every second corner, but now they're, with the bigger chains and shopping centres, like we call them more shopping centres rather than malls. We don't tend to refer to them as malls. Some people do, but most people don't say malls. We still say like the shopping centre. Right. They weren't so popular when we were younger, and they've only really come to Australia, the big shopping centres or the big malls, in the last 25 years, I guess, and that's really I guess put out of business a lot of the little mum and pa type milk bars or independent butcher or
we've seen the same thing here.
Independent veggie, like vegetable, fruit and veg,
Well, and what's really kind of neat here is you're kind of seeing things come full circle, where you're kind of seeing a little bit of a resurgence with the mom and pop stuff, which I think is great. I love the mom and pop concept. I love the small business idea. I love the idea out there just hustling, making it happen kind of thing. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and we'll jump right into this thing, man. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Brooke Strahan.
Did I get it right?
Welcome.
Did I do it?
Yeah.
All
Thank you for
right.
having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. So you are in Australia and we are in Georgia. So you're just getting started with your, what is it, Friday there, and I guess it's Thursday evening here. Really grateful that you were able to, we were able to coordinate our schedules to get together. I'm really excited to talk to you. You've got so many cool things going on, and I hope I'm succinct enough to cover all of them. But I want to start right off of the get-go. You grew up in a style and a manner that I think that is really important, and it's a thing that I try to emphasize with my little girls. And the kind of growing up in the country. Tell me a little bit about how you grew up as a little one.
I grew up on a farm, but this farm was located right up to the top of a mountain, and that mountain
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, and that mountain was covered in, I guess, like cooler climate rainforest. We have a few different types of rainforest here in Australia. You can have tropical, which is way up north of Australia, and where I was located, which was more the south coast on the eastern side, it's more cooler climate rainforest. So it was a really special and beautiful place to be as a child.
Well, and one of the things I think is really cool is you learned to shoot, and you're very comfortable around guns and that kind of environment. So what was your exposure to that growing up? Did you learn to shoot as a child early on, or did that come later on in life?
Yeah, so as a child, I was exposed, to firearms and to shooting. Just being on that farm environment, as most children on farms are. We have now the laws are a little bit different, because Australia has some of the strictest gun laws in the world.
No kidding.
But they are certainly still legal. But yeah, it's really, there's a lot involved now to handle a firearm in Australia, that it was a little bit different when I was initially growing up. So.
What's your perspective on that? Do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing? Because certainly there's been in the U.S., there's been with some of the mass shootings and stuff, there's been a lot of call for some gun control, and then there's a lot of proponents. Obviously, that's a big part of our country.
It absolutely is. It's just that our constitution is different. We don't have it in our constitution, the right to bear arms. So there lies the difference.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's the main point of difference. So we are allowed, as I said, we are allowed to have arms, but self-defense is not a reason, not for a civilian. If you work in law enforcement, the military security roles, then yes, you can carry, obviously in the line of your work, you can have firearms, and different types of firearms. But as a civilian, you can have them, but you have to have a good reason. You have to have done a training course. You have to apply for your license and show the reason why you need to have that license before you can even think about going and purchasing a firearm.
That's a great transition, because one of the things I also wanted to bring up was your time that you spent in the military and your exposure to firearms there as well. Yeah,
so hence why I feel confident and competent with the use of them, because I've had obviously very strict and some of the best training, and it's all about safety. When you're getting trained at that level, it's all about firearm safety, and that's always stuck with me, which is a great thing. For me, safety is paramount.
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean, and with guns, I mean, there's not enough safety training that you can ultimately do. I think that's something that you can repeatedly drill in over and over and over again. There's always an opportunity to continue to work on safety in that regard, for sure. So tell me about your experience in the military, because you had a pretty interesting story going in, and your experience doing the, let's see if I can say it right, the RAAP. Did I say that? I'm going to butcher this. Say it.
The RAAP.
Acronym again.
Yeah. So it stands for the Royal Australian Air Force. So
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so we tend to say RAAF or RAF
RAF.
for short, but Royal Australian Air Force. It comes from obviously the English Air Force, because England being our mother country, and they are just RAF, so Royal Air Force, where we're Royal Australian Air Force.
Was that time that you spent in the military the impetus for your writing?
It's definitely contributed to my writing and helped with giving me some ideas in the plot line, and certainly helped with some character development as well, because I've been able to draw upon some of my experiences during that time and put them into the character, but however the character's not me. But writers will often write about things they know, even if it is fiction.
Right. And obviously with the description of the character and the role that character plays, it's obvious to see a lot of you in that character. But like we were talking about before, you've actually got a lot of you in several of the different characters in your writing, not just the main character.
Yeah, certainly.
So let's go. I mean, I was going to kind of wait before we dove right into the writing stuff, but I mean, we're here talking about it now, so let's dive right in. Obviously, I have great aspirations of writing, and I'm trying to continue to develop in that role, both in a nonfiction and in a fiction role. And you're one of the first authors that I've had the opportunity to interview that's in the fiction genre as opposed to the nonfiction genre. So tell me about how you kind of got started with that, and what was the impetus for the character Bianca and the book.
I'll start with the writing side first, because I've got a background in writing, but not highly professional, but somewhat. I was just kind of lucky, I guess. I got my own newspaper column in my early 20s, even without having a journalistic background. I just basically had this idea for one and put it to a paper, and it was quite a major paper.
What was the idea?
It was called Slice of Life, because I'm actually a qualified life coach, and I got my qualification when life coaching probably wasn't even known. You know, it's just kind of starting.
Right.
And people were, I guess, you know, because I was so young, people were like, "How can you be a life coach? Like, you're so young." And I tried to have to explain that it wasn't about necessarily life experience. It was coaching was about knowing the tools and then being able to pass on those tools to other people, you know, to help them.
True.
Yeah, it wasn't so much about life experience. Yeah, and so I had this idea for a column, and ended up being called Slice of Life. And I just spoke about different life skills and different coaching tools, that type of thing. And yeah, the editor of the newspaper really liked the idea, and so I had my own column. And yeah, so that kind of started my writing career. And from then, I just once I was working privately, once I was out of government roles, I just every now and then would be asked to contribute to certain like magazines, you know, like industry publications and magazines about things like security and emergency management, things like that I ended up specializing in. And so that was, you know, I always had that little bit of writing background, but I never had any aspirations to actually be an author. A lot of authors and novelists say, yes, it's always been my dream, you know, it was always my dream to be one, and you know, I finally made it happen.
Because there's quite a bit of difference between a nonfiction writer and a fiction author. And that was kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, is like, how do you make that shift? Because that's a big, big difference, right?
Yeah, but as I said, I had no aspirations to be a fiction author or novelist, if you want to use that term. It basically just happened. I had this story in my head, and it just wouldn't go away. And these characters, and I could hear them talking and conversations, and I actually thought I was going crazy. I go, what is all this in my head? Like it's like I was off daydreaming with the fairies all the time in this movie in my head, pretty much. And I'm like, what is going on? And then it just dawned on me, I think I've got a book. I think I need to start writing this stuff down before it goes.
Right, before I lose it.
Yeah, so that's how it just all started. But the funny thing is that I've realized now, looking back, I've realized that I've had this in my head since I was about 18. Like a lot of yeah, and I didn't know what it was then. I used to think it was just me daydreaming, like having like these little fantasies in my head. But really, that was the start of the whole story and the character development and the Bianca character. Well,
that's fascinating too, because that's really before you got involved in the military, really.
Yeah. It was, like I said, about from 18, it started, and I had no idea that's what it was. But now I know that it had always been there. And it wasn't until a few years ago, it was like became extremely predominant in my brain. And that's when I realized
after you're on like season 3 or book number 3, things kind of start to come together. The pieces start to make sense.
Yeah.
You can kind of look back in retrospect a little bit. Well, I think that's because because I always consider writers and authors to be artists at the end of the day, like a painter or a musician or something like that. And an artist in my mind is a conduit. Like an artist is just like whatever they have is just kind of flowing through them. And I think that happens with authors, with writers, and it can happen certainly like with painters and traditional artists. And I just think that they have, like, it has to just come through them. They have to just get it out. And clearly that was kind of the case with you as well. So that kind of, that's always a great identifier that, okay, that you're on the right track. There's something there. You go with that. You don't question it. You don't ask, you just go with the flow. You just let it be what it's going to be and let it turn into whatever it's going to turn into.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. It's sometimes when I'm writing, it's like my fingers, because generally, sometimes I actually write like pen to paper, but most of the time it is, sitting there on the laptop. And often like my fingers can't keep up with my brain.
Isn't that crazy?
That's
that flow state.
There are moments, that's that flow state, which is always brilliant when you're in that.
Yeah,
it's when you're not
getting to that flow state, because sometimes it doesn't come so easily. I've found that to be the case, and for me a lot is like once you get in that flow state, it's amazing and that's awesome. But like even just finding the time to create the space for that flow state can be difficult. So
absolutely,
especially in my case when you got little ones running around like crazy. But that's another story. So just, I don't want to give away too much about the book, but just because you're from Australia and there's probably a lot of the U.S. audience that may not know, give just a little brief synopsis about the trilogy.
It's called the Subject series. There's going to be 3 books. The 2 are already out. So the first one's called The Subject, and the second one is called The Subject 2, Fade. So it's like The Subject 2 and then Fade. So the third one, I'm not going to give away the title, but it will be The Subject 3 something, and it's going to start with F as well. And it's going to be a simple word. But that word ties into what's happening.
The storyline.
Like the storyline. So it's a psychological thriller series, but not horror psychological thriller. So not your classic like Stephen King style. Because a lot of people, when I say psychological thriller, they think, oh, scary. I'm like, no, not scary, not that style. It's classed as psychological thriller just because it's got the twist, so hence being a thriller. And psychological, it's got the mind play. So
I kind of think of it like the female Jason Bourne kind of concept. Would that be a fair assumption?
Kind of. I don't know if Bianca's as cool as him.
I don't know, man. She's pretty badass. I don't know.
But she is pretty deadly, especially like she gets better like in the second one. In terms of better, I mean she gets more badass and
Oh,
cooler.
even better. Yeah, see, I even got to the second
Yeah.
one yet, so I'm just
Yeah,
scratching the
no.
surface.
That's there's more action in the second one.
Nice.
Like she's blowing up cars and stuff like in the second one. So
Serious business.
yeah.
So do
Yeah,
you find writing fiction more rewarding than the nonfiction route?
Yeah, I do. But in saying that, I've got lots of other book ideas, and some are nonfiction, and some are fiction as well. Like I've got another 2 fiction books in my head, which I'm just trying to put aside in my brain. I haven't written anything down because I really want to just concentrate on getting this 3rd novel done.
Right. Obviously,
but
that's
I do.
priority number 1.
Yeah, but I do have ideas for 2 others. Whether they'll ever come to fruition, I haven't trouble saying that word. You know what I mean?
Come to fruition. I'm with you.
That's it. You got it. And I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe in a few years. I don't know. There's always time. Like I don't need to rush these things.
Absolutely. And I found too, to let them kind of simmer and saturate a little bit usually tends to help. It certainly has helped in my case. Because if I had just rushed to publish right out of the gate with the content that I had originally laid out, it would not nearly be what it is at this point already. And I still have a pretty good ways to go. So makes sense. I want to spend too much time on the writing stuff. I definitely want to talk about some of the other lifestyle stuff, because one of the original appeals to me is your lifestyle and the kind of the lifestyle that you have crafted by design. That's obviously a big theme for this show. So tell me about, you had a really cool childhood growing up on the farm that you've kind of now recreated as an adult. But what's one of your fondest memories growing up in the kind of rural Australian, I'll call it outback, if you will?
It would definitely be like the freedom it allowed, and the exposure. Like for an example, like you said about fondest memories, I remembered like just walking through the rainforest with my dad and with my brother, trying not to be left behind, because I was a little girl.
Trying to keep up.
Yeah, trying to keep up, and I'm only a tiny little girl at this time, and just that exposure to everything like in the rainforest. And you got to remember, in Australia, everything's trying to kill you.
Right.
so you learn to, so you learn, like, you try not to tread on a snake, like, there's spiders everywhere. There's, I'd have to, like, would be out in the rainforest, and I'd have to wee, so I just like squat down. And I remember one time I got back to the house, and guess what? There's leeches on me. Where? Like, that's fun. Like, leeches used to. Yeah. So the leeches used to, when it would rain, we had the leeches so bad that when it would rain, they'd crawl up our house windows.
Okay.
You certainly like to check yourself for leeches all the time. But people might go, "Oh my goodness, that's terrible." But for me, like,
it's par for the course, right?
It's made me like who I am, and it's helped me with my career, because I'm not precious at all.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that a little bit. So as an adult, you've gone on and you actually had a little bit of a modeling career on top of all the other government work that you were doing as well. But then eventually and ultimately I don't know if I might be putting words in your mouth to say felt a calling to come back to that kind of that farm and rural life. But at some point, you and your husband were able to kind of recreate that lifestyle as adults. So tell me about that transition.
In terms of like with the modeling, that was just something that that I always did when I was a bit younger, just casually. I was put through, they call it finishing school. I'm not too sure if you have them in the US.
Yeah, in the deep English, South, we call it the cotillion.
Yeah, they say finishing school is an English thing. And so I was put through that, and that was ran by Australia's very first supermodel, lady named June Daly Watkins. She's now passed away quite recently, actually. So that kind of got me into that, and I just used to do it part-time, but it was never something that I wanted to pursue as a full career. Plus, it's very difficult, extremely difficult industry.
Well, it's a certain kind of lifestyle for sure, right?
Yeah, but basically, you know, that was always kind of off to the side until a certain age, and then my professional career just took over, and I just couldn't be bothered and didn't have time for that. And I did end up living in some cities just with my line of work and professional career, and I was still commuting when we bought the farm, so where I live now. So it's not near where I grew up. It's about 7 hours from where I grew up. So it's a different landscape where I am now. Oh, okay. It's what we call the Victorian high country. So I'm in the valley, but all the mountain ranges are behind me. And we actually got to the ski fields about 30 minutes as the crow flies. Nice. So it's not too far away, and we get snow just on the hills around the farm. So it is
significantly different than rainforest, though. Obviously.
Yeah, very different terrain. And Australia's like that. We have a very diverse topography and terrain, like depending on where you
that's
go.
So funny because like all of us, or me in the US, all I think of like is Ayers Rock and like that particular. I think of all of Australia as looking like that one little spot, you know.
No, only the centre, because the centre's desert. So obviously it looks like desert, but
yeah, but you're talking rainforest and stuff. I mean, obviously that's dramatically different.
Yeah, we definitely have very diverse, and so where I am, it's the wine region is nice. Well, the vineyards start about 15 minutes away from where I live. So beautiful. It's all wine country. So like, unless we're in drought, it's generally extremely lush and green, you know, with all the vineyards all around. And so maybe similar to your California, like Napa Valley type of landscape, like in terms of if you're looking at like the, you know, in the valleys through like the vineyard areas. But yeah, they're all surrounded by mountains, by mountain ranges. Nice. Yeah, but where I am, I'm really quite isolated. So I'm not in town. My nearest largest town is 45 minutes drive. And then my other largest town is about an hour the other way drive. There's a tiny little village about 20 minutes from me. So I'm definitely out of town. I have 18 kilometers of dirt road before I hit.
The sticks is what we call it down here in the south.
Yeah. We say in the sticks as well.
Awesome.
The other one we say is I tell somebody in Australia, oh, I live out whoop whoop. We say whoop 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 whoop. I live out whoop whoop.
I like that.
That's a real Australian term.
Yeah, for sure. That almost sounds Aboriginal.
Yes, yeah, because a lot of our Indigenous Aboriginal names are doubled. So towns, example, Wagga Wagga. Right, so that's quite a large rural town in New South Wales, in the state of New South Wales.
Well, what's so cool is like this, despite the fact that we're literally on like opposite ends of the planet, we still both kind of create that rural kind of lifestyle of kind of connecting with the woods and with nature and having that connection with the land that I think, and part of the theme of this podcast is so important, you know, that you have that. And for me, it's trail running and, you know, and running around in the woods essentially, but it's all kind of that being connected with the land, being connected with nature and having that non-urban environment, if you will.
To me, it makes for a simpler life, even though it can be an extremely challenging life as well, like living in a place like I do.
In those kind of situations, you have to be willing to work hard. It's a simple life, but it's not an easy life.
Yeah, and just there's a lot of challenges that come not even just so much from the farm. It's just from the environment of where we live. Like, for example, we had and you would have heard about them in the US, we had the really, really bad bushfires at the start of the year, pretty much from New Year's Day, and we thought we'd lose everything. We're amazed. We're still at the farm.
Where you are personally, that had a big
yes.
impact on you.
Yes, yeah. I thought the whole farm was gone.
No kidding.
I was evacuated 3 times.
Wow.
From the property, but it ended up going around us, so in the forest around our property, and then coming back down, and it did take out neighboring properties.
Wow.
So it swept around us, and we didn't get ember attack. Yeah, so we were just really, really, really blessed. But the thing with that was that it went on for almost like 2 months.
Right.
Like,
I remember it kept going. It kept going.
You know, and you would feel safe, and it would be downgraded, like the authorities would downgrade it. And then all it needs is a change in wind, and it can flare back up, and the next thing you know, you're under threat. So it was a really, really tough couple of months. And Australia was in drought as well. So it was, it's been really hard.
So have you guys been able, and your neighbors and surrounding areas, have you all been able to recover from that, or are they still in like a state of emergency, or where do they stand now?
Yeah. So they're all like doing repairs and things like that, because the nearby neighbors lost more. It was their grazing land. It wasn't like they lost like one kind of dwelling, but it wasn't a main dwelling. But they have a lot of grazing land and a lot of cattle, and they lost, that land, and it's like fencing, things like that, which
right.
still cost an absolute fortune.
There
was a house down the road from us that it got completely wiped out. So I'm not too sure what I think that's about to be knocked down, and I don't think it's going to get rebuilt. I'm not sure. But where we lived, we were just so lucky. There were other areas in my state, because the fires weren't just where I was; they were all over the state.
All over the whole country,
and through other states, and then through other states. So there were other areas that just got devastated. I mean, people are still, obviously, they've lost everything. They're still going to be in full recovery mode, like, trying to sort things out.
Yeah. One of the positives, though, like we've seen, and you were talking about how it's similar to California in the Napa Valley, they deal with a lot of the same issues with forest fires as well. One of the positives that does come from that is when you learn how to let nature kind of do its thing and kind of run through that cycle on a traditional level to where it doesn't get so quite extreme. It can actually have some benefits to it in the grand scheme of things, like with the regermination of plants and how it clears out the underbrush. And we're still trying to figure some of that out over here. But I think there's some better ways to handle it than what we've kind of done in the past. But I'm glad to hear that things are kind of at least on the road to recovery back over there, because that can certainly be a tough thing.
Yeah. And I mean, where I live, we've had really good rains. We had the best autumn. We say autumn, not fall, in Australia. So we've had the best autumn rains for like a long time, and now it's in winter, and we're still got rains, and we're still getting some growth.
Right.
So that's great. I mean, there's other places in Australia that still need a lot more rain, but at least where I am, we're being really blessed. And
your autumn is our spring, so that's all kind of happening right now. Like, so I guess we're kind of in the winter.
Yeah, so we're winter now. We're into winter now. So you guys are in summer, aren't you?
That's such a trip. And for what it's worth, I guess it's worth noting that you're kind of technically at the beach right now. You're not even at your normal farm homestead, right?
No, I'm not at the home. And we say farm instead of ranch.
Farm,
because sometimes, like people say, I always get asked about my ranch by my US friends, and
Well, because
So
you
on
have
the farm,
anytime you have you hear livestock because you have some cattle.
yeah, yes,
We hear
yeah. So we
livestock,
have
we automatically think ranch, but
ranch, yeah.
whatever. It's all
It's just a term we don't tend to use in Australia. Right. So whether you're growing crops or veggies, or whether you've got livestock, it's always just a farm, or a property. Or we might say like a working property. If it's a really big type of ranch, we generally call it like a working
like a working farm kind of thing.
A working farm, a working property. I mean, we have some in Australia that are as big as some European countries, like one farm.
Because it's just so vast. Well, it's funny. One of my buddies that lives here, and it's interesting that you live in the wine country. He's a wine maker. His name is Simone Bergese, and he's from Italy, but he cut his chops in Australia in the winemaking region over there, producing wine on a really grand scale. I guess there's some pretty big vineyards down there.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge thing in Australia now. And I'm going to say it, we produce the best wine in the world. And it can basically grow anywhere in Australia.
No kidding.
It's amazing. We don't just, places where they didn't think, if you planted a vineyard, they weren't sure how it would go, have been really successful.
It's very conducive.
Yeah. It just seems to work here. And where I live, it's mainly Italian varieties of wine because we have a strong Italian, originally from Italy population. Of course, Australia is extremely multicultural, and they come out generally a lot during like the 30s and some a bit after 40s, 50s, and from Italy and work really, really, really hard. And a lot in my area were tobacco farmers, so they set up tobacco farms. But then our government made that illegal, so they had to change, and so they went to grapes. And now they're really successful. Will run successful vineyards. So for my area, that's the general story.
Nice. But you guys, where you farm, your farm in particular, you don't do any of that. You're kind of what do you farm? What is your
so we're more hobby. So mine's in the hobby that hobby area. So
fun and game
in Australia. Well, I still make money from it, but it's not huge amounts or anything. It's
not that industrial scale like those ones that
no. So I'm specializing in breeding like my goats down. Because in Australia, miniature everything's in terms of livestock is really popular, and people want them all as pets. They even want like little mini goats like to run around their apartments and stuff. Not that I would recommend that, but that's what some people want.
They still poop a lot, regardless of how small they are.
Yes, they do. So that's more my area, is just specializing in that hobby pet type of field. And
I love the Highland animals too, because they tend to be a little bit hairier and a little bit longer, like whatever. That it's a cool look.
Oh, they're absolutely gorgeous, and they can be bred down, in size to if you've got a smaller bull, and people pay big money if they're a little bit smaller. They just love the Highlands in Australia.
It's the same theme around here as well, for sure. So let me ask you this. So you've got the farm going on and you've got this new book coming out. What are some of the future plans? What do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Well, hopefully I'm still doing some writing. As I said, I've got a few ideas for some other books. I will be glad though, like, to finish this particular series. I'm kind of at the point where
you're gonna close the chapter on this with
close the chapter on this. Like, she's taken up, when I say she, Bianca character, she's taken up enough of my life now, I think so.
Well, like I said, I mean, I know you say there's so much of you and other characters and all that, and there's so much of her that's not you, but certainly from an outsider's perspective, we certainly feel that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I just say to people, because once you get through the book series, like she's pretty crazy, and as I say, oh yeah, there's parts of me like her, but hopefully I'm not her. I'm hoping I'm not that bad and crazy as she is,
Right.
because she's quite a psychopath. So yeah, but yeah, I think I still want to illustrate as well, because I do some illustrating and I want to keep up with that. And I also want to start helping people with their social media. I found that that's something I really enjoy because I'm a creative person. The Instagram space for me is a creative outlet. And I do have people reach out to me a lot, like asking for help. Not so much how they can grow their Instagram, because that's not more what I'm about. Like it's more about how they can engage their audience, and with that they will naturally get followers. But yeah, I get a lot of people ask about, you know, like my photos and my editing and you know, just the overall look of my feed. And I want to be able to pass on those skills to people or help people so they can have a creative and cohesive feed if that's what they're looking to do.
Well, I love that, because that's actually how we first connected, was through Instagram. And I could not agree more. I've actually had some of those same questions as well for you, because you do a beautiful job at Instagram, at social media, and in particular, like keeping a common theme and a common, there's just so many aspects of the way that you manage that Instagram account that are very appealing aesthetically. And obviously that comes from your modeling background. I feel like some of it, but certainly your natural eye with the color schemes and the consistency. How did you learn that? What's your experience with that? What are you telling people about that? Because I mean, that's a huge appeal for you.
It's been a bit of a natural development. I haven't studied it. There are a lot of books and training courses and videos, etc. Available, but it's just been through my general experience and kind of trial and error, I guess, a little bit as well, and certainly looking at some other people's feeds that I admire, and you know, really looking at it and seeing what they're doing and being able to identify, you know, what they've done and taking some of that. So one of the big things that I tell people is that I use presets on my photos. You know, and they are available to everyone. Some you can get some free, you can pay for some.
Which ones do you like?
What, you want me to name like the ones I use? I'm trying to remember the I'm trying to remember, but there's so many. Like if you Google presets, like there's so many companies and people offering presets. A lot of photographers create their own presets and then put them for sale.
Somebody like me who like wants to kind of develop that habit or develop that craft, what would be your recommendation for how to go about that?
It would be, yeah, for one, finding a preset. So the preset is something you put over the photo to give it a certain look. So it will affect the color, like the coloration, the lighting. So you have to find a preset that works for you. Like the one I'm using at the moment, it suits who I am and my lifestyle, and the environment in which I take the photos. So you've got to find a preset that will work for the main things you're photographing. And there's so many there. Example, if you're a fitness instructor, you can, or a PT, you know, or a personal trainer or something like that, and you're photographing a lot like in kind of urban environments, in the gym, that type of thing. Then there's presets that will say like fitness blogger, be titled that. And they will be, you know, they will fit in probably for the lighting and stuff that you're normally photographing in. All right.
Huh.
If you're out, like the one I'm using at the moment is actually titled Bali. So it works, even though I'm not in the tropics, it works for an outdoor environment. Yeah. And yeah, so it just depends on on where most of your photos are going to be. So you find your preset that you like and that appeals to you and going to work for the type of photos you take. You put that preset over, and you can adjust presets as well if if need be. And then the other main tip I have is you download an app that allows you to arrange your photos before posting. So it's separate app to Instagram, and there's a number of them out there. I use Later, so Later, and that's it is free, but if you want the premium service, it costs money, like most things. And that allows myself I put my photos into that app, and then I can play around with them. So I can
even schedule them too.
Yes, and you can schedule them as well. So it's good if you're time poor. So you can pre-arrange your photos and you can schedule them, because that's if all this appeals to you. Like for a lot of people, Instagram, they just want to just take a photo and post it immediately. So it is Insta. And that was the original purpose of it, hence the name Insta.
Right.
It's instant. But for people who want to use Instagram to help grow their business or like their personal brand, or like me, like my personal brand and what I do, then that's not the greatest way to go about it. Instagram's a free advertising and marketing tool, and if you want to get serious, you should be using it to its advantage. So taking that little bit of time to try and take photos, and they don't have to be absolutely perfect. Like my photos are taken just on an iPhone. I'm not using a fancy camera or anything, or having a professional photographer follow me around.
Because it certainly appears so. Right.
Yeah,
That's the look that you get.
People think I've got somebody following me around taking my photos. It's like, no.
Paparazzi style.
Yeah, it's like, no. Just taking that time to get some photos that capture the essence of who you are and what you do, and having them pretty organic. Like some of my photos are set up, but a lot of them are organic as well. So moving captures, are capturing what I'm doing at that moment. That's important, because you still want to be real, and show who you are. Yeah.
Well, one of my biggest compliments to you, like you've got the model look, because you've had experience and exposure to like being a professional model and having that look, and that's, I'll call it sex appeal for lack of a better word. But one of the favorite things to me is just seeing you like with that natural smile and that just kind of that, I won't call it selfie, if you will, but just kind of that offhanded whatever. It's like, it's cool to have that in the mix as well, kind of throwing that in there.
Yeah. I definitely, I like to throw in all different photos that capture what I'm doing and who I am. So it's not all
keeps it real, right?
Yeah, but it certainly is me. Like, and you've got to throw in you. Because people want to see who you are. And I have no qualms saying that, that I definitely throw in some sex appeal, because sex sells. I'd be lying to say that, it doesn't. It does. And I have lots of my followers who have reached out to me and said, initially I followed you because I saw a photo of you in a bikini and I liked it. And they say, now I follow you because I like your lifestyle and
actual content.
They actually like my content and that I engage as well, because this is another piece of advice I give to people when they ask about social media. I say, it's not about the number of followers you have. Obviously you want to have some following, okay? But it's not about the number of followers you have. It's about the engagement you have with those followers and they have with you. That's
Great
so important. Yeah, that's so important if you are selling a product or selling a brand, because there's no point having 1 million followers and no one's engaged. But if you've got 10,000 followers and 6,000 of them are engaged, then that's amazing.
That's huge.
That's amazing, and you'll be really successful. And so that's one of my main pieces of advice for people yeah, especially when they say, oh, how do I get followers? And I'm like, well, it's not, obviously you want followers, but it's not necessarily what it's about. How about you engage with the followers that you have?
And that's why those comments and responding and all that kind of stuff is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who goes into my Instagram will see that I do respond. And yes, that is really time consuming. Don't get me wrong. It's but I try and do it. I can't, always respond. Sometimes I do miss, comments and messages. And I don't actually have notifications turned on my phone because I don't. It would just be crazy beeping all the time.
Yeah, you can't.
I can't.
It's not healthy.
But when I sit down, I'll try and dedicate some time to responding and try and get through it. One thing I've been doing lately, because I'm quite slow typing on my phone, even though I can obviously type fast on the laptop, on my phone I use one finger. I'm really old school.
You really? No kidding.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. As such an accomplished author, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, just one finger typing on my phone. So I'm super slow. So I started doing voice messages and just sometimes just little voice messages. And people appreciate it so much because they're like, oh my goodness, like you're real. And
kind of
I can't believe
with a face or a voice with it.
And I have people say, I can't believe like you sent me a voice message, or you must get so many messages. I can't believe you responded to me, and things like that. And I'm just like, well, you took the time, to send something nice to me or say hello. So yeah, as long as the messages aren't rude or lewd, then I'll take the time, to try to acknowledge that.
That's a great idea. And really, probably it's faster and easier for you to record a quick voice message than it is for you to actually go through the whole typing process. So it's kind of like a win-win.
Absolutely.
I need to start doing that. And I noticed you would responded to a couple of my things with voice responses as well. I never really had thought about that aspect before. That's a really good thing to consider. I like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So what's something odd, weird, or different about you that differentiates you from most people? That's maybe contributed to some of your success.
I get described as unique a lot during my whole life.
You are unique, for sure.
That is the word. That is the word that people associate with me. Unique. And
wonderful, right? I wouldn't have it any other way. I love that.
Yeah, well, at first I was a little bit like, is that an underhanded, compliment?
A jab there?
Like unique. But now I'm like, nah, that's a compliment. I love being called unique. And I think I'm just described as unique because I'm a walking juxtaposition, if that makes sense. I'm a contradiction of myself. The way I look is really quite feminine and girly, but I'm really not at all. I in terms of my accent, apparently I have quite a posh, Australian accent, so I seem quite posh. People hear me speak and they think I'm posh, and yet they
you're really just a country girl at heart.
Yeah, and they look at my fingernails and they're like broken and like absolutely filthy. So they don't expect me to have the career I've had and to enjoy the types of, I guess, more male dominated fields and areas that I enjoy. So I think that's what makes me unique. I'm also unique in the fact that I'm extremely black and white. Like I'm extremely like rational and in a way not very emotional, which is not always a great trait, but that's who I am.
Level-headed.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I don't let emotions get in the way of things. I think that I see things for what they are, and don't.
Well, it could certainly serve you well in stressful situations, for sure.
Yeah, definitely, and just in general life, like it makes it a lot easier in relationships as well.
That's probably some of that military training too.
Yeah, I think so, because it's kind of this or that, and not really a grey area. Yeah.
So tell me a story or experience that would kind of sum up Brooke.
I'll probably just, there's lots, but there's probably one that I can think of where I was doing my first triathlon. And I was just like an Olympic-sized triathlon, so not the huge ones, just the smaller ones.
Hey, they're all huge.
Yeah, they're all huge.
A triathlon is a triathlon. I don't care which way you slice it.
And basically how that one started, because I've always been sporty, but it was through work, and they were putting in a team, but you all had to do all three parts, but it was still a team thing. And they needed a female, and the female they had, she'd pulled out. She was double booked or something. And they walked around the office, and the next thing I know, the captain of the team, he appears in front of my desk and like, Brooke, you want to do a triathlon? And I'm looking at him going, what? Like, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm not in shape to do a triathlon, and I can barely ride a bike. And this is what I said to him. I said to him, I said, I can barely ride a bike. He went, you'll be right. You've got 4 weeks. I'm like, 4 weeks? and
no problem.
Yeah, no problem. And that's what I did. So I trained my little butt off for 4 weeks. I could manage to stay on the bike without falling off. I rode a mountain bike in the triathlon because I was so incompetent on the road bike. Like, I didn't think I'd be able to stay on. I went so slow that it was like I was in a parade and everyone was waving at me. And all I could see whilst riding my mountain bike was flashes of people in Lycra going by me on their $10,000 bikes.
Right.
And I was thinking, all I need is a basket attached to the front of my bike with flowers in it.
Right.
But what is so funny is that during this bike leg, I could see a woman in front of me, like despite all the flashes of everyone else. And suddenly I was approaching her. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And the next thing I know, I'm next to her and she's riding. She's part of the, doing the bike leg. You're doing her thing. And I'm next to her and I just look at her. I'm thinking, you are the slowest person in the world because I can barely ride a bike. And then I went past her and I went, that's amazing. And so I felt really good.
Huge ego booster, right?
Yeah, so that kind of sums me up. I'll give anything a go. And I don't really care what people think. Most people would have been embarrassed by my bike leg. But to me, I was like, well, I did it, so I don't care.
Well, that's such a beautiful experience. Because for me, like, I obviously don't know too many Australians, but coming from a triathlon background, most of the Australians that I do know have some kind of background in triathlon or some kind of history with that sport. So to have that story and to have it fit into that genre the way that it does, and have you from where you're from, it fits perfectly with my theme and all my preconceived conceptions of Australians. So that's just perfect. Spot on.
Yeah, we like our sport and fitness down here.
Well, I mean, you guys breed them badass up there for sure. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it takes a certain amount of fortitude, and I don't want to call it strength and conditioning, but just there's a work ethic that comes from Australia that just resonates with me quite a bit. So it's one of the reasons, again, I was so excited to get you on the podcast as well. So as we start to wrap up and wind down, tell people about where they can find you on social media, what is your Instagram platform, but also do you have any charities or organizations that you'd like to talk about or mention?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Hi There Brooke. So as if you're waving at me, hi there, Brooke. So at Hi There Brooke, and Brooke with an E.
I love it.
If anyone, yeah. It's funny because some of my followers think my name's Heather.
Right.
Like I'm German. They think I'm German and it's a German name. I have people write, hi Heather, and sometimes even people write, hi Heather. like, hey, Heather. They send
Well,
me a
yeah, because
message.
when I first saw it, I just assumed it was some kind of delineation on Heather as opposed to
Yeah,
hi there.
yeah. It's like, hi there, Brooke. Yeah, I'm not even sure where that came from. I just wanted something a little bit different. Yeah, and so that's my Instagram account. I don't have any other social media because I found that Instagram is enough for what I do personally. Just for what I do personally, it's enough, and it's so time consuming for me already that I just wouldn't be able to handle having other platforms. I do have a website, so it's www.brookstrahan.com.
That's where we can all find the books.
But in saying that, you can buy the books through my website, but I only ship to us within Australia through my website.
Oh,
but
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but my books are available internationally. So if you just jump online and Google the subject by Brooke Strahan or the subject to Fade, it will just pop up, and then you can find all the retailers that sell it. You know, like
and for those who are listening, it's Strahan.
Yes, that's right. Brooke, Brooke.
Looks like Strahan.
Yeah, it looks like Strahan. How it's spelled. Yeah, so most of the online book retailers stock it in both print or ebook if that's your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you like to consume your content? Do you prefer hard copy? Do you prefer ebooks? Do you prefer audio? How do you like to consume?
I'm old school, so I like print. I like hard copy.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm not really into the ebooks personally, but certainly for a lot of people, they love that because they don't have the clutter of having all these books lying around.
Yeah, I like the clutter. I like it. I like having
I like how books look. I love bookshelves.
Yeah. I like to write in them. I like to the whole 9 yards. I do all that.
Yeah. My books aren't available through audio. I've had a few people ask me about that, but it's not something that I've been kind of looking into yet.
You should totally do that with the great accent that you have and everything. That would make you. I would imagine your audiobook would do quite well.
Oh, thank you. Well, it might be something in the future that once I've done book 3, I might look more into that.
Yeah, baby steps, right? One thing at a time. Get number 3 wrapped up and out the door, and go from there, right? Excellent.
Yeah. So, I'm for in terms of charities. I give to some charities that generally involved with the environment or with animals because that's my passion. I'm all about protecting animals and looking after our wildlife. That's really, really important. So that's more my passion.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So as an author and someone who is very well read and all that, any books that you would recommend to my listeners or anything, obviously besides your book, which we all worth checking out, but what anything that you're real high on as far as reading goes?
Yeah, well, some of my most favorite reads lately, it's been an Australian author, and I'm actually friends with him. His name's Bram Connolly, so Bram, like Bram Stoker. Yeah, so Bram Connolly, and he has just releasing his 3rd book, but his first 2 are fiction. They are really well-written Australian military thrillers. So if you want something different, like especially if you're in the US and you want more of an Australian feel and an Australian take on really the Australian military and our special forces in Afghanistan and what seeing it more from like their side, they're really good reads. So he's got 2 out at the moment. First one is called the Fighting Season.
Okay.
And so it is fiction, but obviously he's used his experiences in combat and his time over there because he's a former Special Forces commander. He actually got a DSM, a Distinguished Service Medal.
Oh wow!
So he's in Australia they don't give out medals lightly in our military. One thing, if you look at our soldiers and that, you generally won't see a whole chest full of citations. We just don't give them out that freely. Yeah,
because all you guys are badasses by nature.
I don't know about that, but so he's got the Fighting Season, and then his 2nd book in that series is called Off Reservation. So it follows that main character into the next part of their journey. So they're two great Australian military thrillers, and he's just released it's a non-fiction book on leadership. Yeah, and it's called The Commando Way.
Kind of like Jocko
yeah.
Willink. Sounds like from our guy in the US. He's a
so that's who I would recommend for Australian reads.
I love that. That's so interesting. The only other Australian that I interviewed for the podcast, her grandfather was Egyptian and grew up in Egypt as a poor. He didn't have parents. His uncle raised him, and he had an opportunity to go to either England or the United States because he was helping the military with translations and whatnot. And he was at a bar, and two Australians got pickpocketed. Two Australian military guys got pickpocketed, and they literally tore the place down and wouldn't leave until they got their stuff back. And they ultimately got their stuff back. They worked it all out. And her grandfather was so impressed by these Australian military badasses that he said, I'm not going to England. I'm not going to the US. I'm going to Australia. And so he ultimately went to Australia, had like 8 kids, and she's ultimately the granddaughter of all that generation, and grew up in Australia and is now a big fan ultimately because of all that. So that's kind of a cool fitting and a good end to this conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time, Brooke. Really appreciate it, and really excited about the 3rd volume coming out, and we'll be looking for that. And once it does come out, we'll be sure to promote that and share it with all the folks US side. Make sure that we get that going. Any last words, any last advice for us? Anything that you want to leave us, parting words, anything like that? How you'd like to be remembered?
How I'd like to be remembered.
That's a little bit morbid, but hey, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. No, I just really appreciate your time. It's been awesome, absolutely awesome chatting with you. I feel really honored and really humbled. And I hope the listeners have enjoyed this little podcast, and keep listening to your amazing podcast. You're doing awesome. It's so good to see people doing what they want to do, and having a go at it, because that's what I believe in, and that's how kind of I want to be remembered, and tell people, like, just don't be afraid. Like, obviously, like you need to be realistic, like have some level of of what's achievable, but if it's pretty achievable, then just give it a go. And who cares what people think? Because it's what a lot of people say to me. They go, how can you do this, or what about your writing? What happens if you get bad reviews or people don't like it? And I'm like, I don't really care.
Isn't that
I'm like, I don't
such
really
a great
care.
place
It
to
is.
be.
Yeah, it is what it is, and I do it for me. And if anyone else enjoys it, then awesome.
Added bonus. Right?
That's why I love what you're doing. You're doing what you love, and people are jumping on board. It's great.
One of the original appeals for me to you was the fact that you have this lifestyle, and what we talk about over and over again on the podcast is creating a lifestyle by design. It's not necessarily about the money, it's not about the fame, the fortune, it's about creating a life that you thrive in. And man, you are doing such a great job at that, and you're such an inspiration to all of us. And I hope the listeners get the opportunity to check you out, because once they see your Instagram and see what you're doing and see that lifestyle, I think it'll all motivate them to head in that direction. So grateful for your time and grateful for the opportunity to talk to you.
No, thank you so much. You take care.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? Was there a topic you wish we had covered? Was there an area of discussion you want to know more about? Or was the whole thing just too long? Please send us your questions and feedback on social media to @extraordinarypodcast, or check out our website, extraordinarypodcast.net. Subscribe there for all the latest episodes, blog posts, and more. And if you're tired of living the same old ordinary life, shoot me an email, nate@extraordinarypodcast.net, and I will send you your own customizable blueprint that will walk you through step by step how to create your own extraordinary life. And if you or someone you know already fits the profile, you can submit a request to be interviewed on the website as well. Finally, if you like what you heard or learned today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and follow the Extraordinary Podcast on all your favorite platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And if you feel inspired, show your support for the show by donating through Patreon. It is through this financial support that we are able to continue to bring to light ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thank you for your support, and most of all, just being you. This is Nate G, and we'll see you next week.